let's get started. Now that we have everything rolling, so we were gonna stream this in Spanish, but we actually got a lot of requests with questions and stuff, so we're not gonna have time to translate. But I will put a video afterwards in Spanish, so that everybody knows kind of what's going on.
Right.
But let's start with introducing ourselves. So Chris, tell me about yourself.
Hey, so my name's Chris. I'm a bass trombonist. I'm actually I live in the Michigan area, but I'm from Littleton, Colorado, which is a little suburb outside of Denver. I came from a pretty musical family. My dad is a drummer, and I started drums as a little kid, and both of my brothers played drums. So when it came time for band, my mom was just like, "You have to pick another instrument. I'm just tired of all the noise, all the banging." so naturally, to get back at her, I learned how to play the trombone, starting in high school. I did my undergraduate in classical tenor trombone at University of Denver. So I got into jazz pretty late, actually. I'd always listened, but I'd never really played or thought about playing and improvising until I got towards the end of college. And then I did my master's at MSU, actually the same as you, I believe. And we didn't actually cross over any years, though. We missed each other by just a year. So. And I live in the Lansing area, and I gig and teach in Detroit a lot. I play with Rodney Whitaker's group, the Rodney T. Whitaker Ensemble, and I teach at the Community Music School in Detroit. So
Nice, Killen. And you have like an album that just came out with your group that you co-lead, right?
Yeah. So me and my colleague Alton Sinclair and I just put out a record entitled Realization for our group called the Sinclair Glassman Quintet. So you can stream it anywhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good record. You guys should check it out if you haven't already. It starts off, I mean, if we're on the topic of bass trombone
right.
with Chris's like original, it's your original, right? D is for Dastardly.
Yeah.
And it's like bass trombone. It's really awesome. Yeah, so if you love bass trombone, you should get this record. All right, so a little bit about myself. Well, I'm from Queens, so I'm from the city, maybe not Manhattan, but from New York. My parents are from Ecuador and Honduras, so I grew up in a Spanish-speaking home, and I did not grow up in a musical family. So I started playing trombone pretty late. Late, right?
Right, exactly.
I started playing, I was like 16, and the teacher was just like, "Here, this is yours." And then my senior year of high school, they were like, "Oh, well, now the bass trombone." And then halfway through my senior year, they were like, "Here's the tuba." And I was like, "Drew, no, I'm tapping out. But so then I went to UNF and I started studying classical bass trombone. So I didn't start playing jazz either until like my senior year of my undergraduate. And I had like my classical degree, and it was awesome. But when I started at Michigan State studying with Professor Michael Dees, that was really like the most focused time I spent on like jazz and jazz bass trombone. And even though he doesn't play bass trombone, he was an excellent instructor. Such a good teacher. So now I'm in the city. I'm freelancing. Well, I was freelancing up until this quarantine thing. And I was doing like a lot of sideman stuff. And then I also have a group that I lead called The Bounce. Shout out to Chamber Music America, because we were selected as their 2020 recipient of the Performance Plus grant.
That's a big deal.
So we've been able to work with Rodney. Hey, what do jazz bass trombonists have in common? Rodney Whitaker.
That's right.
So he's been, our mentor through the process, through this 2-year contract of listening sessions and the concert season. It's been so much fun working with that group.
Yeah. Gina does a really cool thing, too. Is actually, for these past few years, she's been working at Brevard Institute, and she's actually teaching jazz bass trombone at a summer camp, which is really unheard of, isn't that?
Yeah, I feel like there's another bass trombonist that's going to be there too. I can't recall his name. Oh, wait, is it you? Yeah, so Chris is going to be there with us, with Alton. So his group, both co-leaders, will be with us that summer. This summer, which is in the middle of June. So hopefully that's still going on, as far as we know. Yeah, I'm crossing my fingers, but everything should be fine if everybody's being safe and everybody takes care of business. I think we're set.
Yeah.
For I think it's the second full week of June that it starts. We got a lot of jazz bass trombone happening this summer. So, all right, one of the things I wanted to talk about is, Chris, what are you doing during this quarantine?
So trying to not go insane like everybody. So I mean, I like making videos and recording myself and so I've just been doing a ton of that. Doing some like remote lessons and stuff, but the main thing I've been doing is I've just been sitting, I'm in my basement right now. I've just been sitting in the basement recording myself playing a bunch of other stuff, trombone quartets, making more videos for 8vbebop, really just trying to keep busy. I think busy makes everything just go a little bit smoother, especially since we're all just in limbo right now. So what about you, Gina? What have you been up to?
Well, I mean, I've been shedding, like I've been trying to shed my doubles, trying to write more. I had a gig coming up with my nonette that as of now is up in the air. It's at the end of May, but I'm writing like as if I still expect it to happen because there's nothing better than like a deadline to kind of push you. And then also just, on the off chance that it happens. And then if it doesn't, like I will have cats come to my I will spray them with Lysol and we're going to do it in my living room and we're going to play on a stream concert, even though we won't get like the same, energy of an audience, but it's better than nothing. So I'm kind of preparing that it's going to happen some way or another. So I've been writing, been shedding. Oh, Chris, this is something we've been doing together. So there's the COVID Big Band.
The COVID Big
I wrote
Band,
it out.
yeah.
I wrote it out because I think this name is so cool. So check this out. I wrote it both ways because I don't know which way is going to show on the camera. But it looks like that. COVID Big Band.
I think it's, wow. Yeah, no, that's so sweet.
I got it. There we go.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, it was upside down. Okay.
There it is.
Yeah.
So it's like the 2-5 Big Band. I just that's
So
Walter.
good.
Walter did that, and as
Walter
corny as he
Kano.
thinks it is, I think it's really fun and a good name. So we're doing actually tracking some big band charts together, me and Chris. So we started with an arrangement of mine, Tricketism, and then we're going kind of like through a bunch of people's charts and stuff. So kind of just, again, to keep ourselves from going insane, but then also like making music with each other, because there's nothing like social distancing to make you socialize more. Like I feel like I've been actually going out of my way to be more social this quarantine. So I have another question. So I know why I wanted to kind of start talking about this. I think it's important, like jazz bass trombone, there's like a handful of people and they're phenomenal, but it's not yet seen as like a jazz instrument. And I thought like it would be fun to talk about it. And also because it is up and coming, I feel like people have this feeling like, oh, they're all competing against each other. But in reality, we're all actually, we're really good friends, and we're like working with each other and shedding together and doing stuff together. And I thought it would be like a great opportunity to kind of like open the floor and talk about it a little bit more and talk about like jazz bass trombone and jazz bass trombone education.
Absolutely.
Is there anything in particular that you're passionate about covering when we're talking about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is that people just aren't really aware that it happens, I think. Especially, like, I get a lot of students that are bass trombonists and they're classical and they play in big band because, I mean, bass trombone is like such an important instrument in the big band. And it's been sort of like a social norm in the music scene that like bass trombone is an ensemble member, but not really spotlighted, except for in certain weird circumstances, like George Roberts, Bill Reichenbach, there's to name a few. But like, I think that is something that people are afraid of doing because they think it's hard, but you can really get into it with just like a little bit of shed.
Yeah. Everything is just kind of repetition. Like the bass trombone is like its own animal, but every instrument is. You know?
Exactly.
So why not the bass trombone?
Why not?
All right, so let's talk about some of these questions that we got asked.
Yeah.
We got asked a bunch of really good questions.
We did,
like stuff that I remember thinking about, like when I was like, "Oh my god, jazz bass trombone? No, I couldn't." Like. So the first question is okay. So they asked dependent versus independent valve bass trombone, or do you think it's possible to play 8vb bebop lines in independent valves? So these are two separate questions, but they kind of felt like the same. So do you want to kind of start with that one?
Yeah, my answer is you can, and I know of someone who does it incredibly well. Two people, in fact, actually come to mind immediately. Well, Bill Reichenbach, obviously, is the first one. And he plays all dependent, and it just blows my mind. And another person that you don't usually see a lot of unless you go to live gigs is Max Seigel. And I actually got a lesson. I got a lesson with him a couple of months ago, and we talked about independent versus dependent. And it made me realize that the only difference is you just have to play one position lower because you're using the first valve now instead of the second valve for all the single trigger stuff. So the answer is absolutely, totally.
And you kind of use definitely more than me, like the second valve kind of independently, right?
I do, yeah. I use it a lot by itself, especially for D flat and for low G flat. That's like.
Oh yeah, I guess I do too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just too lazy to go out to fifth position.
Yeah, I have a shoulder injury, so anytime I don't have to extend, that's actually really great for me. So, and I think also when it comes to like dependent and independent valves, it's just whichever one you're shedding.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because everything is just, I mean, anything can be done if you think about like all the things that have been done on instruments. Like, for God's sake, Michael D's exists,
Yeah.
So you know that it can be done. It's just a matter of like repetition and really taking time and shedding it. And yeah, it is possible to play the lines on dependent valves if that's what you play and that's what you've been shedding.
Yeah.
The next one, this is actually my favorite question. And it was asked by Evan Clifton. So I met him at the trombone workshop like way back in the day, but it was basically he wants to know what is the initial crossover period into jazz like for each of us. So you start.
Just into getting into improvising, I'm assuming, and getting comfortable playing. I mean, I think before I really started to get a foothold of I could stand up and take a solo like on a tune. Well, it didn't really actually take me that long to just get into the mindset. It's mostly just like listening a lot, doing a transcription, like learning a solo and then maybe making a solo and just getting out there and playing. Because that's really what the biggest hurdle I had to overcome was just getting up and playing without knowing 100% of everything I'm going to play immediately. As opposed to like, playing a written sheet music. So.
Well, that's good for you. The crossover for me was a little bit traumatic.
Oh no.
I mean, it felt traumatic for me.
Yeah.
So I started like when I was because I started my last year at UNF and I was like a senior already and everybody like around me was killing. Again, I say traumatic, but it was really just like how I perceived everyone around me to be perceiving me. But I don't think anybody was really thinking about it as much as I think, I don't think anybody's ever really thinking about you as much as you think they are. It's really you that's thinking about you. But everybody was killing it and everybody was like, I like went into improv and the first tune I had to learn was Giant Steps and I remember being like, I hate this so much.
Brutal.
Like, how am I supposed to learn this? Like, I can't even play a blues, I don't even know what a blues is or like what any of this is,
Yeah.
So I kind of got thrown into it and everybody was killing and everybody had been playing like for such a long time. These are people that like were like, just like really talented young musicians and I was just there. And it was really intimidating. But what really helped was studying with Professor Dees because he just had like a really streamlined way of how to practice. So, and it really just like, it like made everything so simple. It was like, just repeat this thing.
Yep.
And it kind of made it like classical music. And I feel like for the longest time I was trying to think of it separate. Like the tenor trombone is jazz. The bass trombone is classical music. But it's not really that way. And they're not even... I mean, they're definitely separate instruments, but it's all trombone. Yeah. And then the tuba it's all just music and jazz and classical. It's all the same. It's like you're just playing and you're just repeating different things, like learning language and keys and learning tunes. It's different, but it's actually not as intimidating as you think it would be once you know how to practice. The problem is finding a teacher that can teach you how to practice because you already are so inside your head with doubt with the instrument that it's easy to just like fall into that hole.
I guess I should make a small disclaimer. I said that it was a quick transition, but it was a quick transition starting when I really started studying, whereas in my undergrad I was kind of like playing in jazz band and sort of in limbo where I would stand up and take solos, but I never knew a single note I was going to play. I was always just like flying by the seat of my pants. And I was just thinking, oh, well, I'll just learn chords and I'll learn all the scales and that'll teach me how to play everything. and I still felt super lost until I started really learning specific material, you know.
Yeah, that same thing. Once I started like learning the specific material, it was just, if you don't know where you're going, it's anything is.
Right.
You just got to know where you're going. You just got
Yep.
to know what's the next step. You don't even have to know what 10 steps away are. You just got to know what the next step is.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So another question. This is from Jonah, and he says, would love to hear your thoughts on bass trombone and bari doubling lines
Mm.
as being independent from their own sections.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So I love playing with bari players. That's like one of my favorite things to do. And I know you and Lanai McKinney are like inseparable bass bone and bari combination. So I think about that all the time when I play. I had this really good friend named Diego Rodoni. I played in big band with, and we really were shedding the bass bone and bari thing a lot during my undergrad, and even when I got into MSU, I got into it. But I feel like the role of bass trombone and bari, the bari is like the tone and the warmth, and the bass trombone is like the punch as well as like the grit. Does that make sense? Because like bari gets like, comparatively to bass trombone, it gets like a very woody and full sound. Whereas like if you're playing like a low D flat on bass trombone and you're cranking it, it's going to be like really brash and harsh. No matter if you're playing like dual bore or whatever, it's going to be like, in your face.
Yeah. So both of us double, so we've played like different parts in a big band.
Yep.
I feel like the bass trombone part is one of the most gratifying parts to play in the big band, in the trombone section. Not necessarily because like the music's hard or anything, but just because you have to like switch hats. Like you're part of the saxophone section. Now you're with just the bari player and the bass. Now you're a trombonist? What? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So articulation on bass trombone. They want to know how to make fast bass trombone bebop not sound heavy. Amen, brother.
Don't we all?
Oh, we're all trying to figure it out.
We're all trying to figure that out. I guess the first thing I think about doing is making sure that the air and slide is in check. Usually that will get rid of a lot of problems. So if you're working on a specific line, I'll practice it with no articulation, and I'll do like fast glisses with the slide to try and make sure that everything besides articulation is in order. So you're just playing like a line, and you're playing it with fast slide and no articulation. And then as you add articulation, I start light unless it needs more. Like lighter is better. Lighter is better unless it's like really not clear. So
that's funny because I feel like, so when I was first learning bass trombone, I feel like there's two like concepts of sound and articulation, and you kind of start with it, and the perfect concept is right between those two. It's like having like a brash sound and having a warm sound, but you can have it too brash or too like warm where it's airy,
right.
And the perfect sound is right between, and depending on which way you're coming from, you kind of observe it differently. So for me, I have to think about articulating harder, because if not, I don't articulate. So I'm coming from the other end of the spectrum where you're like, okay, I have to like kind of lighten up on the articulation. And I'm like, I kind of have to make it a little bit more aggressive, like, because it's not clear. So really, yeah, it's like just kind of finding that middle ground of like, how much do I need to articulate for this to sound at all?
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, speaking of bass trombone and bari, if I'm not sure, I just try and find a bari sax or a saxophone player playing it and just imitate the sound. Because usually, we're trying to make it sound like we're pressing a button or something, so it just sounds clear. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then again, everything is just repetition. So, like, we're talking about, like, jazz and jazz improvising and stuff, but I still, like, shed classical music and, like, shed etudes and stuff like that. Because to articulate a note, you also have to be able to play it really, like, clearly and cleanly. So just like a long tones will help you with articulation more than you think. It's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question was kind of to talk about acquiring language in the low register. Here, you go. You start.
Okay, so for acquiring language in the low register, I just lie to myself and tell myself the bass trombone isn't any different from any other instrument. And I just, who plays the best lines? Okay. Even if I just want to think trombone, I think like, okay, who plays amazing lines? JJ, Slide, Curtis Fuller, Steve Davis, Michael Dees. It's just like there's a lot of people that just play. If you're just speaking strictly bebop swing, those are like my go-tos, and I'll just take it, learn it at half speed, nice and slow, make it really comfortable, and the more I think about committing things to memory and internalizing them, the more likely they're going to be sloshing around in my brain. And when I come to solo, they might pop out more likely than if I just was reading it off a page or something like that. So what do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, so for I feel like for me the best I kind of I guess if to put it that way too, I lie to myself. It's like the same as the other registers. It's the same as the other instruments. It's just another notes, it's just different part of the range or whatever. And I kind of have convinced myself that it's just I just have to repeat it. I just have to like learn the language. And for me, I liked writing etudes over songs because then like I would memorize the etude and then like say I forgot like a part of the song, like I could always go back either to play the exact thing in the etude or just remember it. And since I wrote it, I'd be like, oh, well, that's, F minor to B flat, or whatever. And then also like learning things in just 12 keys and just like learning, like going straight from a transcription and just like biting off. There's this book that I love. It's called Steal Like an Artist, would recommend. And it's basically saying that like you don't start as a genius. And to think that you would start as a genius is kind of like, it's like, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You start by imitating the same way that you do when you're learning like language when you're a kid. You're imitating things and you're still communicating, but it's like maybe limited at first. So you're like doing a lot of repeating or maybe short phrases. And then as you get, older, you're able to form complete sentences, and then you're able to do like nuances, and then you're able to write an essay, and then you're able to write poetry, and then write lyrics, and it kind of just gets deeper the more you do it. But you have to start just saying like, Dad. You have to start from the beginning.
At the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't consider the fact that jazz is such an oral tradition, and that not to say that it doesn't happen in classical music, but in jazz there's such a higher emphasis on it being something that you hear rather than something that you look at on a page. And so there's a skill set that has to be built, which new jazz musicians are overcoming, not only learning how to create melodies, because they're learning how to compose, as well as learning oral skills at the same time. I think that's why people get overwhelmed, is because you kind of have to just sit and realize how much new skill building you're learning when you start playing and start improvising. There's so much going on at once. So
I like to think of like the difference between like classical music and jazz, like theater performance and comedy.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Like theater performance, you are given like a character, right? Like this is the character you have. This is the music. And you have every liberty to like interpret that character, but it's still that character.
Yes.
So you get a lot of creative input in regards to how like you're going to phrase things, like how you're going to do facial expressions, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But the character is decided for you, and it's not any less creative. It's just a different like part of the brain. Whereas comedy is you're creating the material. You show up to a stand-up act and you have written and composed all of that, and then also you're not like you're memorizing it in the sense to say it, but you're also kind of reading the room to see like, oh, maybe this joke isn't like as funny or whatever. The same way that you read a rhythm section in jazz where you're like, oh, they're not responding to this, or maybe they responded to this more. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have like all these jokes in your stand-up act that you can reach for. And it's like, again, not any more creative. It's just different.
Yeah.
And kind of like getting your head centered around the idea that it's just different. It's just a different type of performance.
That's an amazing way to think about it. I never even thought about it that way. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Complete sense though.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm always trying to talk myself into it, like lie to myself, like, oh, it's fine. It's just like comedy.
That's right.
It's fine. It's cool. It's like that meme with the stuff on fire in the back. This is fine. This is fine.
Exactly.
This is fine.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about playing in big band. Oh my God. That's how I fell in love with the bass trombone, to be honest. So like I started as a tenor player, but oh my God, and I started playing in big band, and I was like, I never want to not do this.
Yes.
But yeah. I have to admit, I'm a little bit fickle, because like whatever instrument I'm playing is the one that's my favorite in that moment.
Yeah.
So, like, I was playing tuba this morning. I was, like, warming up. And I was like, God, I just want to play this all day. This is my favorite. Oh, forget the trombone. I don't ever want to play that again. Just tuba all day. And then I picked up the bass trombone and I was like, oh, man, forget the tuba. This is the best thing ever. I love this. And then I picked up my tenor and I was like, oh, no, forget it. Those instruments. No, this is where it's at. Like, I'm so fickle. It's just, but I'll go back to the instrument and whatever I'm playing is my favorite one. But big band is what made me fall in love. Because I am a bass trombonist at heart. Like, at the end of the day, like, I am a bass trombonist who doubles up to tenor and down to bass trombone. You're the same. You double up and down. It's not that we're tenor players doubling down. It's we're going from the bass trombone.
Yeah.
But playing in big band, yeah, it totally made me fall in love with bass trombone. And it made me fall in love with jazz. Because it's just so much fun. It, like, really, it kind of, for an instrument that is so independent from the ensemble, a lot, you know, it's kind of interesting that of all the people in the band, they would be the most scared to solo. When you got, like, all this stuff written in your part, that's like, you're soloing.
Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about some big band stuff?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm kind of a meathead, so I like the idea that when I first started playing bass trombone, the first day that I, like, nailed, like, a good low C on, like, a big moment in a tune, it was just like fireworks. My whole head just, like, blew up. I was like, that's it! Or, you know, like, one of my favorite big band charts of all time is Blues Backstage, and I know you've played that. Blues Backstage. That's got some of the most ripping bass trombone stuff ever. It's like octaves with the other trombones, and you just get to, I call it laying waste to the galaxy. You just...
Oh, yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, like, surprising, like, why are bass trombonists nervous? You guys solo all the time.
Yeah.
We solo all the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, we play, like, the most exposed parts, too, like, a lot of times. I mean, you listen to Thad Jones and everything. A lot of times he'll just, like, make the bass trombone play, like, a lot of hits by itself that everyone else plays off of. So you're so used to just being like, it's just me now. Boom. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's funny, though, because it's still written, so I kind of get it. Like, it's like, but it's written for me, so I didn't have to.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the idea of creating is more intimidating than...
Seriously, yeah.
Like, replicating and messing up. Like, if you like play something hard and you mess up, it's like meh. But if you create something and it's not like tasty jazz, then for some reason, you know.
Yeah, it's personal.
It feels personal. You're like, oh, I'm not a musician anymore. Like, I never was.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I get a little passionate about when I get upset about, you know, it's really easy to get, like, upset, especially with an instrument that. So there's so many bass trombonists. Look, we have Reggie Chapman, who's going to be with us next week. We have Ron Wilkins, who we actually set this up because Ron does a stream from 3 to 4 every
That's
day
amazing.
on his Instagram and Facebook. So you should tune in to watch him warm up and everything. We did this specifically after that, so we wouldn't... Because it's like, you don't want to put all the bass trombone stuff at the same time. It's
That's
like
right.
two bass trombone stuff happening in the whole world, and we're going to put it at the same time. Jeff Nelson, Max Seigel. Is it Seigel?
Yeah, Max Seigel, yeah.
Seigel. James Borowski, Bill Reichenbach, Becca Patterson, George Flynn, Doug Proviance, Earl McIntyre, Greg Gosnell.
Yeah,
Mattis
Greg Gosnell, yeah.
Cedarberg.
Yeah, Matisse, yeah.
Matisse Cedarberg, Jeff Cortazzo, Dave Taylor, Martin McCain, who runs the Jazz Bones out of Austin.
Yeah, so he's the instructor of Texas State. He plays in Malaysia Philharmonic, but he runs the Jazz Bones ensemble out of Austin. He's an amazing bass trombone player. And yeah,
amazing.
I wanted to put him in there. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And then we have Massimo and Major Bailey.
Yeah.
So we have, like, a lot of bass trombonists that are, like, you know, like, you would think that it would be so easy to hear jazz bass trombone, but it's not. And there's something about representation, like not having any representation, and you're like, oh, well, since nobody's done it before, then it can't be done. It's not something that should be done.
Right.
which I think that's another reason I wanted to do this, because it's like there are so many people doing it, and also it's like not just people playing, not I say just, I love bebop, but it's not only playing bebop. There's people who play more modern stuff, who play more avant-garde, who play more like just all these different styles of but there's no kind of like a record of them until recently. Now all of a sudden we have like all these records, and that's amazing, and I feel like that we're kind of growing into something that's really cool.
The pioneer of the bass trombone like recording and everything with the group is actually Jen Wharton. We didn't talk about her yet, but we were going to talk about her later. But I just wanted to give that quick shout out because we put her up top, not in the just because we knew we were going to already mention her by now, but we missed it. So Jen Wharton.
We missed it.
Jen Wharton's
She has her own
Bonegasm.
little category.
I went on Google and I looked up jazz bass trombone. I just typed that, jazz bass trombone. First thing is the article about Jen Wharton's Bonegasm, and I was like, that's it.
Love her.
It's amazing.
She's amazing. So because like her thing started off with like she's always been, and she's very transparent about the fact that she's like been shy about improvising, and she specifically made this quartet because she wanted to get out of her own bubble that she created for herself, and she did, and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, really. I think she's so amazing. She just like recorded this quartet, and it's like commissioned from all these amazing composers, and she's like starting work on her second album now.
That's amazing.
And it's called Not a Novelty.
That's so good.
It's so good, yeah. It's amazing. But she does, if you haven't checked out Bonegasm, you have to check out Bonegasm. There's like, so, okay, let's talk about albums really quick. So we have your record, we have Jen's Bonegasm, and then her other Bonegasm that's gonna come out, Not a Novelty. We have, Reggie Chapman, it's Prototype, right?
Prototype,
correct?
Yep. It's Pressure Fit Music, yep. That's
awesome.
Right.
And then we have Ron Wilkins is also working on a record. I'm not sure when the exact release date is but he posts about it a lot. So if you want to hear about it, go to his
he's put
page and he talks about it.
Yeah, he put some little short videos online too, and they're sounding really good. So I'm really excited to check that out. So
yeah, it's gonna be cool. I'm excited about that too. But there's like, oh my gosh, it's pretty good. We got a lot of records.
There's a couple of bass bone specific records that I've seen too. I mean, there's Mike Davis and Bill Reichenbach, the absolute trombone stuff for sure, as well as Massimo Perrone and Bill Reichenbach did a record called Two Brothers, and I checked out. They did some tuba on that too, and it's a really cool. It was just like when I was entertaining the thought of playing bass trombone, I went online and dug. So it's like, And then of course we can't forget about George Roberts. He's got like a really old record out of him playing like his hits with like a smaller ensemble, and so his velvety sound is like just amazing.
Remind me the name of the arranger who did all of Frank Sinatra's charts for George Roberts.
Is it Neil Hefti?
No, it's I don't know if somebody remembers it, but Frank Sinatra loved the bass trombone so much that he like specifically requested to feature it on his charts. He was like,
I can't remember off the top of my head. Nelson Riddle, yes, Nelson Riddle.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Three Bones and Harry F. Baby.
Amazing. Yes, Nelson Riddle. See, this is why the community is killing.
That's right, yeah.
We didn't have an answer and y'all came in. But that's amazing. I think that's killing. Like, the instrument is so cool that Frank Sinatra was like, write it in. Yeah,
exactly. We need it. It's so cool.
Frank Sinatra's a G.
And of course we can't forget about Bill Reichenbach's solo on Wave. That's like, that's it. That's it.
That's it. All right, so we're done, guys.
It's all done. We can go.
There's a lot of bass trombone happening. You'd be surprised. If you know where to find it, it's there. Okay, so I wanted to talk about, all right, so this is, it wants us to discuss the difficulties of starting jazz late.
Oh.
I put the quotes late.
Right.
But it wasn't quoted when the question was asked.
Yeah. I'll say a little bit about it. I guess the only constraint that you have is how much time do you have before you need to use it. being able to work on starting jazz, and how much time do you have before you have to be out in the field really working on it. So if you start, I started late. I know you started late. I'll actually, like a large majority of people that I talk to, I was listening to an interview earlier from the Yardbird Productions. That's that new Peter Lynn's new podcast, and they had Oscar Perez on. He talked about starting late, and I'm like, okay, so if everybody starts late, then when it actually is late? Is there a time that you start late in jazz? I feel like there isn't. I feel like it's like, that's something that I tell myself when I feel like I need to get my butt kicked. I'm like, oh, well, I'm late. I better get it together. So I think the only difficulty is just getting into the swing of being an information download. Just like getting comfortable, being like, all right, I got to just learn new information all the time. Where we're skill building, working on new stuff, and just being patient and recognizing that, yeah, you might be late, but you still have time, and being patient with yourself will make it learn so much faster than being someone who's like, oh, I have no time, I have to do this right now, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, for sure. For me, I feel like, and I'm just kind of figuring this out now, but I wish I would have known it earlier, is, two things. First of all, I literally have until I die. Both of us have until they're prying the horn out of our hands. So it's not necessarily, like, I have this notion in my mind, like, I'm running out of time because I'm late,
yeah,
I'm like, I'm late, I'm running out of time. And so I keep telling myself this, but the reality is, when is running out of time? Like, I know it's like for the gig or for the, but we do have until we die. So kind of having like patience and knowing that this is like a lifelong endeavor. Like, we're not done yet. We're not even close to being done. There's so much stuff I want to learn. There's so much stuff I want to shed.
Yes.
So kind of being patient in that sense, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
But also, like, man, I feel like I loved practicing, and I practiced all the time, but I feel like because I was so anxious about starting late, and I was so nervous, and everything was so overwhelming, that I was just in a constant state of overwhelm, and I didn't enjoy practicing as much as, like, now. Like, oh my God, you can't pry the horn out of my hands.
Yeah.
But not because I have to shed, because of whatever. I just really want to learn, like, a new thing, and kind of going into the mindset of, like, this is exciting. Like, I'm learning a new thing, and enjoying, because, like, I always thought about it, like, most of us we're not going to become, like, rich from this. We do this because we love it. And so if we're miserable and broke, it doesn't feel like a win to me.
No.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit? I know you run the bounce, so I want to just hear your opinion a little bit about running an ensemble as a bass trombonist.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was going to ask you that, too, because you're co-leading the group.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Like, what's cool about running a band as a bass trombonist is it's like, people think of it as a novelty, even though it's, Jen Wharton quotes, not a novelty.
Right.
But it kind of, like, increases the turnout, because people are like, oh, what is this thing? It's like every time, either one of us posts, like, one of the 8vbebop videos, it's like, everybody's like, whoa, that's amazing, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But, it's because it's not done that often, so people will come out and people will, like, support, and it's been, like, kind of tricky, because it's like some of the tunes I don't hear them in the bass trombone register, because I do double a lot now, so sometimes I'll, like, hear it in the tenor trombone register, and I really don't feel like it's that much different when it's just, because it's just me, and I'm just, like, deciding. I just go in and I'm like, all right, these are the tunes, this is the arrangements, I go in with the arrangements and whatever. But my question to you is, how do you navigate that with another trombonist without, like, for example, the record that you guys did together, I think it was, like, so beautifully done, where I think it's so easy if a bass trombonist is like a sideman or even co-leading a group to kind of fall in the wayside. But you and Alton seem to have such a good friendship that both of you seem to respect each other so much that you gave each other moments through the record from beginning to end where it was, like, clear that you were both band leaders, as opposed to, like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Can
yeah,
you talk
thank
a
you. I
little bit more
appreciate you
about
saying that. Yeah, I guess you just have to. I think the big thing for both of us is that We just needed to capitalize on the register as well as like, so for instance, if we're talking about like our arrangement of Shortcake, which Jason Hainsworth did. So we didn't actually have a say in this, but a good example is like, even though he's playing the melody, my role is both like kind of like in a big band where you sometimes you're like a bass line, sometimes you're playing like a counter line, sometimes you're harmonizing, sometimes you're doing a pad, but like I think the feature comes from how you juxtapose the melody, you know? And also, like, we have a trend with our tunes where we write, where both of us each get time to play the melody. Because most of our tunes are like, they're either like an AABA form or something like that where there's repeated phrases. Nothing is completely through composed. So there's always a situation where something is repeated. And when it's repeated, we just hit copy paste to the other instrument and just figure it out from there. So, yeah, and it's really helpful because Alton is also extremely like versatile in his ability to play the instrument. So he can double if I'm playing up, like say I'm playing a melody up in the top register, he can double it down low and still create like a full sound for the ensemble. So, yeah.
Magic, baby.
Magic.
That's what I call magic.
That's right, yeah.
One of the things that I kind of wanted to bring up, so on the topic of like using bass trombone in like ensembles, so there's big bands.
Yeah.
And there's one group in particular, especially that really moves me and it really inspired me, and that's the Dan Pugash Nanette. It's the Dan Pugash Nanette +1 because there's also vocal.
Oh.
But the instrumentation, like without vocal, is a Nanette plus the vocal. And they have alto, tenor, bari, standard piano, bass, and drums, trumpet, trombone, and then bass trombone. That's what makes it the Nanette.
Yeah, okay.
And I feel like that's like so awesome because a lot of times when people say Nanette, it's usually you're adding the guitar.
Right.
But he was like, no, I'm going to add the bass trombone. And
That's
it sounds so good. And for the longest time, I was thinking about it, because I've always felt like I love writing big band and I love writing small group stuff, but my voice has always felt like it was in octet writing. And so I really felt like, man, I'm a bass trombonist. There should be a bass trombone in the group. And then kind of trying to figure out, like, am I going to play it? Am I going to conduct and have a bass trombonist there? Like, how am I going to maneuver this? And watching him use the bass trombone, he has Jeff Nelson in his group. And it sounds so good.
Well,
like, it's unfortunate because right now everything is live streamed, but the live streams do not really do it justice. Like, I remember watching them on live streams because it'd be like on the way here and on the way there. I'd be like, I tuned into the live stream and it sounds, oh my God, so amazing. The arrangements are amazing, but going live was a total game changer. When all of this is over, the first thing I'm going to do is go watch Dan Pugash Nanette at the 55 bar. Everybody should do that.
I haven't watched a lot of their stuff, so I'm like, you've really, really piqued my interest.
It's really good. And then it's just like, Jeff Nelson sounds so amazing. I just want to do like long tones for the rest of my life. When I hear Jeff Nelson play, I'm like, damn, I just gotta.
Yeah. Gina, can you talk a little bit about maneuvering being a woman bass trombone player? Yeah,
that's a good question. In the list we have. Jen Hinkle, actually, we didn't add her in the list, but it's Jen Hinkle.
Oh, right, yeah.
Jen Wharton, Becca Patterson, myself. There's Maxine. I'm so sorry, Maxine. I do not know how to say your last name. It's German, I think, and I just can't say it. But she's awesome, and she's like, right now she's studying, well, I guess she's still studying live probably with Dave Taylor. So there's like few women, that's 5. And that's like in the city, so I'm not really familiar with like any women outside the city, but in the city that's like 5 women, which is like, wow, 5 whole women, but that's still just 5 women in a whole scene of jazz trombone, it's like, a lot. I feel like there could be more, and I feel like, again, it's like cool because it's like a novelty, like, wow, look, she's small and she plays bass trombone or whatever. But as far as audience draw has been cool, but in regards to being in bands, it actually hasn't really. I'm very lucky. Like, and we're all very lucky that we're in an age where people just kind of like hear women more. So like I can think of only one time in my entire experience here. I've only been here for 2 years, but in the entire 2 years that I've been here, only one time where I felt like somebody was like kind of being biased towards me because I was a woman, and it kind of hurt my feelings. But at the end of the day, and this I get from David Gibson, he recommended the book, The Four Agreements, and one of the agreements is don't take things personally.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with like me if someone else is bothered by my presence.
Yeah.
It has more to do with them and their like previous biases and
Yep.
stuff like that. And I think the only example, and it was really small too, it was like I like showed up at a big band gig, and like right before there was like a Dixieland set, and the trombonist was late, and so somebody asked me, they were like, hey, do you know like Dixieland tunes? I was like, yeah, sure, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna get to play the thing. And they're like, yeah, but can you blow over them? And I was like, I mean, yeah, like, do you want me to play the first set? And then they were like, oh, well, I don't know, maybe. And then a guy shows up right after me, incredible musician. There's nothing about his musicianship, but he didn't know him either. So it's not like he knew my playing and versus his playing. It was just these two new people that came in, and he goes, hey, do you know the Dixieland book? And the guy's like, not really. And he goes, yeah, just come on, let's play it. Oh. And I was like, dude, I just told you I knew the book. Like, yeah. And then you're going to kind of just, and it felt like, I don't know, it was just kind of like an awful feeling, because it was like, it didn't matter that I knew whatever. It kind of was, the guy just didn't appreciate my presence, and he was like, I'd rather have this other guy. And it has nothing to do with your playing. It had nothing to do with my playing. It had nothing to do with knowing the book. It was just he didn't want me there, and it was like, it hurt my feelings, but that's the only time. And then it was like so fleeting, because afterwards I was like, then you go and you play the gig, and it's like people will listen for you to mess up, and they're like, oh, look at her over there, and they'll listen for you to mess up, and then you don't. And then they're like, I'm gonna hire her. So it's like, sucks, because it's a lot of pressure, but if you're gonna listen to me to mess up and then you get impressed by me, that's good. Yeah. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I guess there is that. I appreciate you looking towards the silver lining.
Yeah, I mean, there's only, I feel like, again, I'm never gonna be rich, so I might as well be happy.
It's true.
It's, and it is really deep, and that's with everything. Like, you kind of have to find the silver lining and just kind of look at it like, how am I going to make the best out of the situation? And for me, that meant, if you're going to pay attention to me, I'm going to give you something to listen to.
Yeah.
Because then you'll hire me. And a lot of the stuff I've gotten has been people who are listening to me to be like, yeah, is she legit? And it's like, you wouldn't be thinking about that. It's kind of, it's dumb. But again, there was that one instance that it actually like presented itself to me and I wouldn't consider it has ever really taken opportunities. I will say that sometimes I'll show up on a gig and I'm like, am I the diversity hire? But who cares? Yeah. Like, I'm a Latina woman, I'm the diversity hire, and it's like, good, because, now they'll hear me, and then I'll like go in a place where I'm convinced I'm the diversity hire, and then I'll keep getting hired again with these people. So again, you just kind of have to like be optimistic about it. Like, all right, you're gonna put me here because it suits you. I'm gonna make it suit me too. That's
inspiring. I like that. Yeah.
All right, so we have some fun questions.
We do have fun questions.
What kind of bass trombone mouthpiece would you recommend?
Yeah, so this is always the loaded question. What kind of bass trombone mouthpiece do you recommend? I know Amodal, that's Arthur again, though, when I said hi to earlier. He's a tuba player. So because of that, I give him a different answer. He needs a different answer because he's used to a big mouthpiece. So I would say, probably like a 1 or maybe a 1 1/4. Whereas, I mean, the real answer is that you need to try a couple of mouthpieces with someone that you trust and record yourself with decent audio and listen and evaluate. Listen for holes in your playing. Listen for, am I able to get the sound that I want out of it? And, but I mean, if you've never used a bass trombone mouthpiece, I usually just say play a 1 1/2.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. I was gonna be like, the standard is just play a 1 1/2.
That's the standard, and I mean, you can't really go wrong with it. Like, same thing with like tenor trombone. I was in a big huff about going back to small tenor. I was like, what mouthpiece should I get? I don't know what to do. And then I was just like, I'll just get a 6 1/2. And it works.
Yeah, I play a 6.5 still.
That's right. I just practice, you know?
Yeah, you just kind of play what you have. I'm the same way. And then also it depends like which direction you're coming from. Like if you're doubling
Yeah.
down from tenor or up from tuba,
Yeah.
the answer is going to be different. But 1.5, that's the
Yeah.
standard.
I will say, I'll say one small thing that helped me was that I played a 4G on my large tenor. When I switched to bass trombone for like a lot, um, I did I did a two for a little while. I played a two, just because it just was comfortable and it wasn't as big of a jump. The first mouthpiece I switched to was like a Shoki 60 from a 5G, and I played it for like a week, and I was just like, I can't even put the thing on my face the right, like, because it's so big. It's like eating my whole head. So I was like, I'm just gonna start something small. I started with a two, and that helped me, and then I eventually worked my way down once I got comfortable.
You know, actually, when I started playing bass trombone, I was playing on a 6.5. I played on a 6.5 for the first 3 years I was playing bass trombone.
On bass bone.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know. I don't have any musicians in my family, and my
Yeah,
band
yeah,
director was a trumpet player, so he didn't know either.
yeah. Exactly. I mean,
Yeah. So my junior year, actually, the professor at the university goes, "Here, you got to play a Shilky 60." And I went from a 6.5 to a, oh my god, I'll tell you what, that was the worst thing I've ever
insane.
done. I like feel like I regressed. I like lost months of my
Yeah,
practice
yeah.
time.
I was in my head too. I was like, oh well, I can't get a sound. I can't get on sound on this. I must not be able to play bass trombone.
I know. The last thing you think about is the equipment. Oh my god. Okay, I like this one. How do you beep and boop with the toot rifle? How do you beep and boop?
You go like this. That's it. That's all you need.
I got it.
Beep
I
bop and
got
toot
it.
rifle. So
And then this is our last question. Why such stank? From
it's
Mr. Toot.
why is such stank? Not just why
That is
such.
a good question.
Why is why is such stank? I feel like
We both have stank faces on our live stream poster.
yeah,
We're like,
exactly. Yeah.
sometimes you're just in it, you know?
That's right. Sometimes you're just going for it.
Yeah. I do a stank face sometimes. I don't do it on purpose. I do notice it tenses a little bit, but it's just kind of like if I'm like feeling it or if I'm like really focused. So that's why the such stank.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we addressed all the questions. I want to give like a few shout outs.
Yeah.
So I want to give out a shout out to Karen Cubides, who is one of the, when I talk about like organization and how to like just being happy and stuff like that and like practicing where you don't feel like overwhelmed and stuff. Karen Cubides and Cubides Artist Services has been such an amazing resource for me, like going in and being able to like kind of she helps you kind of think of music in a way where it's not just about practicing, but it's about enjoying it within your life. So
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Karen Cubides for that. She does a blog. It's called The Musician's Guide to Being Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise. That's really amazing. I want to give a shout out to Kim Wren, Financial Services, because next week she's agreed to do a Zoom call for anybody who's interested in these quarantine times. I know it's like really scary, financially for everybody who's freelancing and stuff like that, that you're like losing a bunch of income. It's really overwhelming.
Yeah.
But she's doing a free Zoom call for anybody who's welcome to come and talk, ask questions about what to do now when the money has just stopped.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk, she's going to talk about the financial aspect of it, and I'm going to talk about kind of like what to do now to set yourself up to continue working when this is all over. Then I want to shout out Professor Dees,
Of course.
right? Because he is the man.
He is. We owe so much to him. He's like, like I would say, as far as improvising and playing tunes, like 85 to 90% of what we're saying, we're just regurgitating from him.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's where we got
For
it all
sure.
from. So.
He's like bringing the trombones, because then there's Wyatt coming. Oh, he's just.
Oh yeah.
He's
right.
just friggin' throwing them out. He's just like, go baby birds.
That's right.
Go play jazz bass trombone.
That's right.
Amazing. So okay, and then also next week we're gonna have at the same time on the same day we're gonna have Reggie Chapman do this live stream with us. It's gonna be so much fun. We're gonna talk about some of the questions that you asked that he could, answer as well, because he's also like a wealth of knowledge.
Yes.
And one more thing. So this sounds like an advertisement. So I write everything down in a journal, and like I've done right now. I think I'm on journal. I like started a new journal for quarantine because I wanted to like write down my quarantine stuff.
Yeah.
And I have this awesome like leather cover for it, and it was done by Annie Life Designs. And so like I understand this is a musician stream, but she's also a small business owner.
Oh wow.
And she does all this handcrafted leather goods, and the quarantine time is kind of putting her out of being able to do the markets. So if you want to support a small business, women in business, somebody who's going to hook you up with the leather journal cover and music folders and stuff like that, mouthpiece pouches, all that good stuff, Annie Life Designs on Instagram, you should follow her.
Yeah. And I got
Anything
a couple
from you?
I got a couple of small ones. So I just joined the ear racers team. They sell like amazing. Honestly, I am so picky about my earplugs. But now that I got my hands on a pair of those erasers, they don't distort the sound in any direction. Like you don't lose top or low, everything just gets a little dimmer. So I've been using them to completely change my hearing protection. And I really appreciate how they're really serious about it being like about being a good, like being safe and being comfortable. That's like the whole motto for them. So and then the last thing that I want to give a shout out for, I just saw this today. Nikki Abisi, amazing trombonist, just invented a slide holder for young students who can't reach 6th or 7th position.
I can't reach 7th. I need that.
And the best part is this is $10.
Oh my God,
I'm like,
amazing.
I'm going to go buy one, and I'm going to completely change all of my young students' lives. I saw that, and I was like a little hurt because it's like the article just said like, music mom. And I was like, she's not just a music mom. She's like one of the leading trombonists in the world, and she's doing all this great stuff. So I just wanted to plug that because I think it just like, yeah, so amazing. So
that's amazing. Okay, well, I think we caught everything. There's some stuff we didn't talk about, but we can talk about it next week because we're going to get cut off in like 60 seconds.
That's right.
So thank you, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you, Gina.
This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Happy quarantine. Happy shutting.
That's right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.